The American people are sick and tired of powerful corporations ripping us off. Junk fees, small businesses struggling, union busting, price gouging, bad trade deals, all of it. I'm convening this special hour today because I'm committed to fighting back. Here because we need to revive and restore and strengthen the American dream for all who are willing to work for it. I know my constituents are. I know the American people want more from this body. In the depths of the Great Depression, Franklin Roosevelt confronted these same forces in a different time head on, saying, and I quote, "These economic royalists complain that we seek," this is President Roosevelt, "to overthrow the institutions of America. What they really complain of is that we seek to take away their power." Absolutely. There's no freedom if families are struggling to meet basic needs. There's no liberty if we're ruled by oligarchs. No one's going to say that profits don't matter. They do, but something else has to matter too. Our safety has to matter. Our jobs have to matter. Our communities have to matter. This country has to matter. For those things to matter, we have to break this corporate stranglehold on our economy and our country. The American economy works just great if you're a billionaire, if you're a giant corporation, but too often our system fails hardworking people. We need an economy and a government reward hard work, not just extreme wealth. Where I come from, where I grew up, that's something we value. I represent the good people of the 17th District of Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania. We believe in hard work. We believe in patriotism. We believe in sacrifice. We're the folks who made the steel that built this country. We've answered the call in every war. We've done hard work like so many across this country have done. But we saw a story that rewarded that sacrifice with trying to strip us for parts, shipping good jobs away overseas, gobbling up small businesses, squeezing them, seeing big, powerful corporations put their lust for profit ahead of our safety. We have to stand strong against those forces, a lot of them created by corporate power that are making life worse for people. It's making life more expensive and too expensive. If American capitalism is going to succeed, we've got to have competition. We've got to take on anti-competitive monopolies, give small businesses, entrepreneurs a shot to succeed and compete, make sure that our safety and our communities aren't collateral damage in the way of profits, and make sure that workers have some say and dignity on the job, the freedom to form and join a union. The American dream has been snatched away from far too many Americans who are hardworking, who are good and decent people, who want to have a shot at dignity, security. It's a devastating reality for folks to live with. It's unacceptable to me. I know it's unacceptable to many in this chamber. And some folks are angry about it. They're sad. They should be. They should expect more of this body, and they should expect more of their government. So I think we need to lay a path back to the American dream. I'm honored to be joined by so many colleagues tonight who will join me in this fight to restore and strengthen the American dream with a strong economic message of taking on corporate power, local action, being unafraid to fight the bad guys when we need to. We can deliver for the American people to bring down costs, to reward hard work, to make life better and cheaper. We can make sure the American dream is revived and strong for generations to come. This democracy is not for sale, and that should not be something that's controversial in this chamber or anywhere else. Our constituents expect us to fight for all of them. One of the places that we've seen this consolidation, this concentration, this raw power really hurt folks, agriculture. We see it because we know that food production is a key step in that grocery supply chain that we know we hear from our constituents about costs being too high. We're all paying more, too much, for food because of this consolidation that we see in agriculture. Folks are getting ripped off. They're tired of it. This increased consolidation, it also puts the squeeze on smaller local farms, family farms, small businesses, often deeply rooted in their communities, in my community, the communities of so many of the members of this chamber. This summer, I visited a farm in my district and met with farmers from the Beaver Lawrence, Pennsylvania Farm Bureau Roundtable. Some of them are livestock producers. They sell their meat or poultry to be packed or processed. In the meat packing and processing industries, some of the most heavily consolidated in the country. Very little competition. For the past decade, the 4 largest meatpacking and processing corporations in the United States, they've maintained about 2/3 of the country's market share. And some independent research has found this consolidation to be even higher. with the largest 4 firms holding up to 85% of the market share in beef processing and around 60% in poultry. That's not very competitive. It doesn't meet the spirit of competition that we want and need for American capitalism to succeed. At that meeting in Beaver County, I heard that compared to larger competitors, these folks had to maybe wait longer to get their livestock in to be taken in by these giant processing corporations, and that they're having a hard time negotiating fair prices, fair compensation. That's squeezing those farmers, those small businesses. That's something we're all going to pay for. It also may be a violation of federal law, the Packers and Stockyards Act. And so after hearing from these constituents, these farmers, I wrote to the Agriculture Secretary calling for action. And that high level of consolidation, once again, is driving up costs for all of us. That market power also means that processors have increased buying power, that they can use to dictate prices to smaller farmers who struggle to stay afloat. And we need a strong agriculture industry. We need family farmers to make it to that next generation, Mr. Speaker. So we've got to promote competition in the food industry, from the farm to the grocery store, every part of that supply chain. And that also means we need antitrust enforcement with some teeth, with some muscle behind it, and real consequences for violations. And this Congress and this administration, the next, should be willing to do that work, to take on rip-off monopolies, to create an environment that fosters competition. That's the spirit of American capitalism that I think we all want, that our constituents expect of us. One where small businesses and farms can grow and thrive. And one place we've really seen, Mr. Speaker, small businesses feel the squeeze, local pharmacists, local pharmacies. You know, these are, you walk across any main street in most of our districts, almost probably any of our districts, there are great small businesses that anchor our communities. There may be multi-generational business, and pharmacies are one of those places. People like their local pharmacy. The pharmacist gets to know their patients. Those are relationships that are important for people's health, and they add to the vibrancy of our communities. But people suffer when they lose competition, when we lose those small businesses across our communities. I visited Town Drugs in Aspinwall, an independent local pharmacy, and I was there with other pharmacists as well, small business owners. And I heard stories about how pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, are frequently steering customers toward their own chain pharmacies that hurt the bottom line of independent pharmacists. Many of these PBMs are often vertically integrated, where they've got a mail order pharmacy, maybe they've got a retail operation, they might have an insurance business on top of that PBM or pharmacy benefit manager business, often charging high or ridiculous fees for paperwork errors as a way to not have to pay those pharmacists and those pharmacies full price. Heard about inconvenient higher prices for customers, heard about patients being steered toward maybe more expensive medications, or specific pharmacies dealing with relationships and networks and all the rest. In Pennsylvania, this year alone, estimates are around 80 local pharmacies have closed. 80 pharmacies. Those are options that are now gone. And it's not just smaller independent pharmacists. The big chains are feeling the squeeze too. Fewer options, worse service for patients who need a prescription, who need to get their drugs filled. It's not good for our economy. And once again, it's this out of control corporate power, Mr. Speaker, that's making people's lives worse, hurting small businesses, hurting patients, hurting our communities and our main streets. We need action on PBM reform. I'm a co-sponsor of several measures here, the Help Co-Pays Act, the Patient Act. These are just some examples of bills that I think this chamber should pass in advance to fight back, to protect local pharmacies, to protect patients, to protect competition that we need in the healthcare economy. We've got to keep up that fight against this out-of-control corporate power to lower healthcare costs, a place that we hear from our constituents all the time, and to protect small businesses. Another example here where we see corporate power making life worse. Well, not a healthcare problem. We see it under the golden arches. McDonald's. People don't think of McDonald's as a small business. It's a big corporation, of course, but it operates as a franchise system. Many franchise owners are small business owners. And yet we know, the internet reminds us, that those franchise owners for a long time did not have the ability to fix their own ice cream machines. You'd see the out-of-order signs. It was possible to get a McFlurry. And the reason why is only the technicians licensed by the company that was making McDonald's soft-serve ice cream machines were allowed to do the repairs. They had a limited number of technicians, so there were long waits for servicing. That's why those machines were broken. That's why you couldn't get a McFlurry. This shouldn't be that hard. And finally, we saw the Federal Trade Commission take action and called out the bad guy here. Now, the U.S. Copyright Office has issued a new set of exemptions, allowing restaurants to repair their own copyrighted equipment used in retail-level commercial food preparation. And yes, that means finally Mickey D's soft-serve ice cream machines should be getting back online. Those repairs should be moving. We'll see those McFlurries flying through again. But again, this is that same problem. Right to repair policy, which is what we're talking about, a right to repair. It's about the freedom across industries to fix stuff, to not let big companies and corporations gatekeep the information that people need to fix things. American people are hardworking. We have ingenuity. We know how to make repairs. This is about freedom in our economy, making sure that small business owners, whether it's auto shops, in this case, McDonald's franchise owners, can make repairs. I think it's fundamentally American to see that competition and to make sure that we're not seeing gatekeeping over who can fix things, whether it's a tractor or an ice cream machine, Mr. Speaker. We've also seen powerful companies use that power. It's not just greed, it's power, to jam us with fees, junk fees. They're often very deceptive, hidden at the end of a transaction. You see an advertised price, and all of a sudden there's fees at the end of the transaction, right as you go to check out, from tickets to flights and hotels, credit card fees, Mr. Speaker, food delivery apps. This has become pervasive in our economy. I was on one of the main streets in my district, Lincoln Avenue in Bellevue, about a year or so ago, talking with small businesses about these fees, these junk fees. I heard from the general manager of a pizza shop who told the story of how his customers in the business, they were suffering because of third-party delivery apps. They were seeing inconsistency between what was available on the menu and what customers were seeing. They were seeing big fees taken out of their orders. Customers were mad because service was getting worse. It wasn't working out for his business. In fact, I went next door to an ice cream shop, told them when I was here to work on at the pizza shop. They told me the same story. These apps were hurting their small business as well. In fact, that pizza shop had to rename. They hired their own delivery driver to bring it in, which was an expense, but it made their business better. It tells you how impactful and bad those hidden fees are on a small business owner like a restaurant, like a pizza shop. They were willing to defend their reputation, defend their business, make an investment, hire in-house, change the name. But ultimately, it was worth doing that because of these predatory junk fees that we see from middlemen. It's unfortunately, though, the newest version of a story we've seen for far too long, a big corporation hurting a small business, Mr. Speaker, and third-party middlemen using these hidden fees to deceive customers into paying more. Again, it might be tickets, it might be a flight, it might be a hotel, and those junk fees often have very little connection to the service or the product being provided. I think they're a lose-lose for our local economy and for working families, but those junk fees might be a great profit source for a third-party middleman or a powerful corporation. I'll give an example. Most sports fans will be familiar here, Mr. Speaker. This past summer, I used StubHub to buy tickets to a Pittsburgh Pirates game. It was actually Paul Skeen's debut. I was pretty excited to see him show up for the Buccos. Took my family. We got jammed and slammed with junk fees like everyone else who buys tickets these days. More than a quarter of the overall ticket price. And those fees are often hidden until the very end of the transaction. It's not the advertised price. Companies like Ticketmaster, which is owned by Live Nation, they control the market from tickets to venues to music promotion. Live Nation directly manages more than 400 artists, controls about 60% or so promotions at major concert venues across America, controls more than 265 concert venues in North America alone. And through Ticketmaster, Live Nation controls about 80% or more of major concert venues' primary ticketing for concerts. That's not competitive. It's not a competitive market, Mr. Speaker. What are they doing with that power? Well, they're driving up prices with things like junk fees. They're making activities like concerts and going to a game out of reach for too many families. These are important events, games, competitions. I mean, my goodness, I'm from Western Pennsylvania. A Steelers game or a Pens game or a Pirates game is a big deal for people. We love our teams. I know I'm not alone in that, in this chamber, Mr. Speaker, and fans are all paying for this. When these powerful companies cut exclusive deals that hurt venues, that restrict other venues, that rip off performers, it hurts a lot of people and it hurts the fans. This behavior seems to be more than just a ripoff, it's probably also illegal. I know the Justice Department's filed suit to split up Ticketmaster from Live Nation, and that case remains pending in the courts. But folks are tired of getting ripped off. They're tired of congressional inaction here. They expect us to take on this corporate power. We know that when massive corporations are allowed to take on small businesses and deceive their customers, we all pay for it. Western Pennsylvania certainly knows that story. We're not alone in that. And as I heard that day in Bellevue and across my district, small businesses are strong, they're resilient, they're flexible, they adapt. They need our help here in the Congress. It's about their workers and it's about our communities. I know that we can step up to it. We've got to do more. According to a 2019 study, 85% of Americans experienced a hidden or junk fee for service. And that was in 2019. And that was before the COVID pandemic, where we saw much more reliance on, say, food delivery. So I know that we've got to do more, and I'll quote the general manager from that pizza shop that day who told me, quote, "These fees may seem small, but they really add up." That's what it's all about, Mr. Speaker. Those fees hurting folks, hurting small businesses that we've got to stand up for, that we've got to fight back on. I want to also talk about our national security. Maybe not a place we think that consolidation affects us, but it does. I have the great privilege, Mr. Speaker, to serve on the Armed Services Committee. I wore the uniform before I came to this chamber and earlier in my life. I will tell you, we have challenges in the defense industrial base. We need it to be strong and resilient to meet the challenges, not just of today, but of tomorrow. When it comes to our defense industrial base, the suppliers, the manufacturers that make stuff here, we need to have them do better. We got to better protect public money. Make sure our Department of Defense is ready and equipped to answer whatever our country might require of our service members. But we have seen the same trends we've seen across our economy in our defense industrial base. 1990, there were more than 51 prime contractors in our defense industrial base. That number now is down to 5. That is heavy consolidation. You see it right here, 51 to 5. These are the companies that make ships, missiles, rockets, you name it, all the things that we need that are central to our national security and our defense. And we've gone from 51 to 5. This reduction is depriving the American people of competition for key elements of our defense. And I hear it from military leaders in the committee. I've seen it in reports that the Pentagon has penned, that too often the current defense contractors, they're delivering not on timeline, they're behind schedule, the costs are too high, the quality isn't what it should be, what the American people expect. So we've got to fight back against this consolidation, Mr. Speaker. I think we need more competition in our defense industrial base. It's ripping off our military, which means ripping off the American people. There's public money we have to protect. So I think there's support building in this chamber, both sides of the aisle, to strengthen competition here to make sure our defense industrial base is stronger, to protect public money. I've taken action, along with colleagues. This year's National Defense Authorization Act, the defense bill, included My Best Price for Our Military Act. That's an important measure. It's a bipartisan bill. It closes a timing loophole that defense contractors were using to delay providing critical certified cost and pricing data to the Pentagon. My bill now requires these contractors provide this data before contract agreement so that we can see whether we're getting the best deal or whether we've got to go back to the negotiating table. It lets officers do a more informed analysis to be better stewards of public money. I hope to see this included in the final version of the defense bill that we will pass and send to the president. Now, I know the defense contractors and others, they lobby to increase the threshold point where they're required to report their pricing data to the Department of Defense under the Truth in Negotiations Act. In 2018, this threshold jumped from $750,000 up to $2 million. So up to $2 million, that meant below that threshold, they didn't have to provide that data. That's less oversight. I think we need more. The goal of our Defense Department is to provide security, defense for all of us, for the national interest of the United States. It never should have and doesn't have the goal to enrich giant defense corporations that produce products that are too often behind schedule, that are overpriced, that don't meet the quality that we expect, that we in the Congress require. We need to ensure that our sailors, our soldiers, our airmen, Marines, Guardians are equipped with the very best. That's patriotic, that we protect public money. So strengthening oversight, enforcement within DOD, take on price gouging, to work with the Federal Trade Commission, the Department of Justice Antitrust Division, all of that is about fostering more competition that we need in our defense industrial base. Corporate power doesn't just hurt competition in defense. It doesn't just lead to higher costs. It does those things. It puts our safety at risk. We saw it with the impact to families who are worried about finding baby formula, infant formula. We see it in sectors of the economy all over the country that when corporate power grows too strong, it can put us at risk. It can treat us and our communities like collateral damage in the way of their profits. We saw that on February 3rd, 2023. The Norfolk Southern train derailed in East Palestine, Ohio, across the border from my district, my constituents in Beaver County in Pennsylvania. We saw it in the news, flaming pile of train cars, horrible derailment caused by incompetence and greed at that railroad. We saw brave first responders rush in to help. That's what people do. They rush in to help and serve others. They didn't know what chemicals they were dealing with, which is its own problem. Local communities felt like they were left out of the loop. They didn't know what was happening. And then we saw a decision to do a controlled release, sending a toxic fireball into the sky that we now know was chemicals, including vinyl chloride. That was later deemed to be unnecessary. The National Transportation Safety Board, the NTSB, their findings included concerns that Norfolk Southern and its contractors intentionally misled the on-site incident commander and local state officials, pressuring them to order the vent and burn that sent that fireball flying into the sky. Toxic chemicals. That's corporate power run amok. It hurt my constituents, it hurt our neighbors in Ohio. Now, it seemed to me that railroad and its contractors pushed that vent and burn because they cared more about their profit than our safety. They cared about getting rail operations moving more than they cared about making sure we were safe. That's unacceptable. It's not just my community in Western Pennsylvania, our neighbors in Ohio. We know tracks across this country. Communities like mine live near, along the tracks. This happens again, and it happens a lot in this country, unfortunately. We have to make rail safer. We have to bring down the rates of derailments, require more of these railroads. I represent a competitive district. I will say, Mr. Speaker, I have the best district in the country. I might get some argument from colleagues here about that. This is a place, like so many others, where folks want the American dream to be strong. I think every member here would say the same of their constituents, that if you work hard, you play by the rules, the American dream is within your reach. That's what we're trying to do. I've been laser focused, as have so many of our colleagues here, about lowering costs, taking on corporate power to protect small businesses and workers, fighting against lousy trade deals that hurt places like Western Pennsylvania, making more stuff in this country, more manufacturing, cracking down on junk fees, on price gouging that's really hurting folks and really hurting our main streets. These economic priorities, they're good policy and they're popular because the American people want us to fight for them. They don't want to get ripped off. They want to see real American capitalism that is marked by competition. Right? The survey data here is clear. This is a poll from ABC News and Washington Post from July. 85% of Americans say higher costs is a very important issue, or one of the single most important issues that they feel that we should confront. There's a tendency by some politics to try and please everybody. Okay. You know, I'm a little sick and tired, though, of folks around here, whether they're in this chamber or out in the think tanks or whatever, looking for a win-win in every situation. You know what? Sometimes there isn't. Sometimes when there's a toxic fireball shot up into the sky near your community, when there are small pharmacies getting killed, when there are junk fees hurting your constituents, sometimes there's a bad guy, and you gotta fight him. American people want us to fight for them. I'm proud to see so many of my colleagues join me in that fight, and the goal here is simple, and it's popular. Make life better. Make it less of a ripoff. Take on the corporate power that's been hurting so many of us. I think that's the path back to the American dream, along with strengthening, revitalizing our American manufacturing. Sometimes you call out the villain. I know we need more competition across our economy. We need to be unafraid of the fight when we have to do it. That we are ready to go to the mat for the American people, for our constituents, to strengthen the American dream. That's the vision. That's my vision. I know I'm not alone in that. It's one that I know will resonate in the Rust Belt and the Sun Belt, the coast, all over this country. Now, I want to thank my colleagues, my caucus members who join me. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate your leadership, and with that, I'll yield the balance of my time.